what is the most afraid that you have been with like something you couldn't explain, as in like paranormal? I'm kind of interested to hear that. So if you see this video and you could like comment or drop a comment below, tell me about it. I would be interested to know. And if you've had an experience like what I'm going to talk about tonight, like sleep paralysis, whether it's worse or not as bad or whatever is what I'm going to talk about tonight, I still want to hear about it. So let me go ahead and jump in. Like, I'm going to say this, like, when this happened to me when I was about 13 or 14 years old, and I had just kind of got into music and everything. I was learning to play guitar, and my grandfather was letting me slip and listen to music and stuff like that, and he was working a third shift job. And when he would go to work at night, I would slip out of the house, and I would go and I would listen to my tapes. Yeah, that shows my age. But my friends at school, they would make me these tapes, and I would have all these different bands and stuff that I would listen to, Black Sabbath and all this stuff. And I got it in my head, because as a lot of kids did back then, because Marilyn Manson was kind of a hot commodity, that I was like some kind of Satanist or something. You know, it's stupid, I know. But and everybody was goth and all that stuff. And we thought that stuff was so serious back then. But it did have us messing and thinking in ways which, you know, we had no business really doing, because we didn't understand. And, you know, me coming from a really strong Christian home, I may have known in my head, you know, more blasphemous ways, I guess, of rebelling against that kind of thing than other kids who may not have, you know, went through strictly Christian upbringing as I had. I mean, like I said, I literally had, you know, because of my grandfather's religion and getting religious and everything, I mean, he took our family pictures, generations of them, and burnt them right in front of my grandmother and everything. So that's a video for another day. So I would get out at night when he was at work, and I would walk around, and I would listen to all this stuff. And this particular night where this happened to me, this whatever this was, you know, they could put the name to it, sleep paralysis, if they want to. But this was like, if you've not ever had it happen, then you better, you know, just hope that you don't, because it is not, when they say like demonic attack, like, man. So anyway, I would always come back home after I'd slipped out of the house. I would come home a couple hours before my grandfather was due to come home. So I didn't get caught. My grandmother was in bed and everything. And I went into my bedroom, and I lay down on my bed, and the bedroom that I lived in, or that I slept in, my feet were toward the door, and the living room was literally right next to my bedroom. And I always had to leave the door open, because my mom used to always like sneak off and run off when she was a teenager. And so my grandparents were very afraid that I was going to do that. Like, she would run off and just be gone. But anyway, and there were trash bags over the windows, mainly to keep me from going out the window, which was silly, because when they would leave, I would just go out the front door. So they figured the trash bags, I would have to remove them or whatever and get caught. So, but there was no light even coming in through that window from like a street light that was literally like right outside there. So that room was pitch black dark when I would go to bed. So I'm laying there, and I'm not necessarily asleep, but all of a sudden I heard the door in the living room. The door open, and I hear what I thought was my grandfather coming across the floor, and you know, and we lived in this this house was almost 100 years old, and I could hear him or something, because it wasn't him, coming across the floor. I could hear the floorboards creaking. And I would usually hear him throw his keys on the table, but that particular night, I didn't hear that. And I hear him come across the floor, come up to my door, because he would always come in and check in that door and look in there to see if I was sleeping there. And I hear his hand on the door facing as he comes to the door, and he looks in, and then I still hear this like creaking across my room, my floor. And so I open my eyes and I look, and I don't see no light from him flipping on the living room light or anything like that. And I look, and at the foot of my bed is this swirling black cloud. I don't really know how to describe it past that. It was just like this swirling mass that was like just swirling in on itself, and it was slowly coming up over the foot of my bed, and it came up over my feet. And that's when I started freaking trying to move, and I realized I couldn't move. I could not move. I couldn't move any muscle in my body. And it's coming up over my legs. I could feel my legs going cold. But it wasn't just like my legs going cold. It was like it was messing with like something spiritual in me. Like, this creeps me out even talking about it. Like, seriously, like I'm wearing a cross. But anyway, it's coming up over me, and I could feel it pushing me down in the bed. And again, like I said, I couldn't move. And the fear, the terror, like the absolute terror that I was feeling was just, it was insane. I've never been that scared in my life. And I could feel it pushing me, like weight pushing me down in the bed. But it felt like it was pushing me down and out of myself, like back into some other place. And you know, the movie Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, there's a scene where Nancy is in the tub, and Freddy's like pulling her back into this tub, and she's like being pulled back into this blackness in the water. And it felt kind of like that, because and she's struggling to try to get back up, and like whatever it was that it was pushing out of me, it was like I could then move on that side of whatever it was, and I was trying to claw my way back up to reality. It's so hard to describe this stuff, because it's like a spiritual level of attack, you know. It freaks me out now. But so it gets up over my chest area, and I'm thinking that I'm gonna die. And I remember at a certain point I almost gave up. I almost was just like done fighting. I don't know, you know, I don't know how else to explain it. But it was like it was messing with my thoughts too. But I remember all of a sudden thinking, like, if, you know, and there was a sound. This is something I always forget to tell people about. There's this sound while it was going on, like in my ears, like machines grinding, like maybe voices screaming too, but it was mostly like machines, and it was this horrid noise that I was hearing. And it was so loud, it was so deafening, and again, you know, like whatever it was pushing me out into this other side, there was a weird feeling there, and it was almost like I could see my body up here, and I was my spirit was down here, and I remember thinking, like, if I let it get over me, I'm gonna die. And I took everything in my being, and I managed to move my fingers just a little bit, and when I could, I was able to push myself up, and when I did, I pushed myself up so hard that I literally bounced out of the bed and into the floor right next to the bed. And at that exact same time, my grandfather was actually he was coming in, like he actually was coming home. And I hear him open the door, and he throws his keys down, and he hears the commotion, and he's coming towards the bedroom, and he's like, "Boy, what happened in here?" You know, and I'm getting up, and I was like freaking out, and I come to the door, kind of meet him at the doorway of my room, and I told him, I was like, something happened to me, and I explained to him what I just told you guys the best I could, the best that a 13, 14-year-old kid could do. And, you know, he tells me, you know, that because he's, you know, Christian like he is, we need to pray about it. And I had no qualms about praying that night. So we got down, we prayed about it, and we set up that night talking for the rest of the night till the sun come up before we both went to bed. And he told me about, you know, this is what's strange. He had instances himself of things happening in that house. One particular incident that he had was when he had first kind of moved into that house. They hadn't been there very long, and he was laying in the bed, and he woke up wide awake. He said, but it was weird because there was like a haze, almost like he was looking through something at the world, he said. And he looked down at the foot of his bed, and there was, I'm not even kidding, there was this black swirling smoke was there, and it was moving. It didn't come up over the bed on him. This gives me chills. Freaks me out. I'm the only one up tonight sitting here talking about this stuff. And it comes up into like this tail, he said, like a tail. And he could see it, and it's moving around the edge of the bed, and it's coming around the side, like up to like where he's laying at. And he always had, slept with a pistol around him, and he, for whatever reason, whatever that would do, but I mean, he was an Army vet, and so like the first thing he thought was to grab that, and he grabs it and like sits straight up. And he said like when he did, it was like reality just like rushed in, whoop, and he looks around and everything's back to normal. He is setting up, and he's got his gun and everything, but the smoke or whatever it is gone. But the fact that all those years prior that he saw similar to the same thing that I saw, that tells me that that's not just some case of like scientific jargon, But anyway, I had some other instances of stuff happening to me. Let me tell you, if you've not heard of the old hag syndrome, look that up. That is some creepy, next level, freaky stuff, man. And I'm thankful that never happened to me. But there are people who've had these episodes where they couldn't move, and they wake up and look around, and there'll be like a man with a hat in the room with them, and he comes over, and it's, either choking them or pushing them down into the bed. And then the another one that's common that people have seen for thousands of years is this little old lady that shambles in the room and hops up on their chest and is like screaming at them and choking them and shoving them down in the bed and stuff. And what's really crazy is that a lot of people, like everybody, describes the same people. They describe the old lady, they describe the hat man, they describe the mass that I talked about, the swirling black mass. Some people call it the ghost. And I didn't know about that stuff back then. It was years later when a friend of mine, I was telling him about like what I just told you, and he was like, man, that, you know what that is? He was like, that's called sleep paralysis, man. That's the black mass. He was, and he looks it up on his computer and he showed me, and so I become obsessed with it, and I start reading about this stuff. And that's where I got freaked out, man, and I found out that like people going back hundreds of years, thousands of years, reported these things happen. That's where the term nightmare comes from and everything. Another incident, not too long after that episode had happened to me in my bed that night, where I had moved in with my mom, and I had came back to the area where I lived at prior, and I was staying with actually a good friend of mine that I used to like to party with up there, and living with my mom, I had a little more freedom. And so I wanted to go back there and chill with this dude. He was like an older brother to me. He's a dude named Jeff. He was a really great guy. And I was staying in his apartment, and another friend of mine named John Boyd, he was chilling there with us. He was staying there with us too at the time. And we were sitting there watching TV during the day while everybody else was at work. And I laid down and kind of fell asleep, and all of a sudden, like, I woke up, and I was trying to get up, and I couldn't move again. And I was trying to get up, trying to move, and next thing I know, like, John's running over to me, and he's like, dude, are you all right? And he's shaking me, and he's like, you freaked me out, man. And I was like, dude, I couldn't move. I was trying to get up, and he was like, man, you were looking up at me, and your face was all twisted weird, and like, he was like, you were reaching, and he was like, dude, you really freaked me out. So that creeped me out, I didn't have that happen anymore for a very long time, but all these years later, I was looking in, I've been obsessed with like researching sleep paralysis and all that stuff for a good many years now. And there's a documentary called Nightmare. If you've not seen it, you should definitely look it up. Terrifying movie. And they talk a lot about the old hag syndrome in that. And incidentally, I do not believe that this is some scientific jargon. People can try to put a scientific explanation on it if it makes them feel better. I don't think so. This stuff, many people have experienced. There's been entire communities of people that have experienced the same type of if you want to call it hallucination, ghost, demonic attack, whatever. And just because, a person, a man, wants to come along who's probably not ever even had it happen to him, wants to put some words to it and say, well, this is what that is. Well, whatever. If that's cool with you, that's cool with you. The people that's had it happen to them and stuff, not all of them, but most of the people that's had it happen to them will tell you that it's not as easily explained away as that. But I was in this very room up here where I'm at, not this room, but this is like an upstairs kind of loft, and I was over laying on the couch, my little man cave over there, and I was watching TV, and I was nodding in and out, and I had been researching this stuff a bit at the time, and I all of a sudden I woke up, and I looked, I could kind of look around the room a little bit, and I could hear the TV, and then I would fall back asleep, wake up, look around the room, hear the TV. All of a sudden, I woke up, and I didn't hear the TV, even though I know the TV was on, and I couldn't move for a second. And this was what was really crazy. I felt like something was coming. I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything. Again, it was dead silence. But I felt like something was coming, and I was trying to move. I couldn't for just a second, enough that I felt that old terrifying way about it, and I started trying to, like a little baby, I was trying to holler from my wife, and she, I was trying to yell for her, and she was downstairs working in our craft room, and I couldn't even say her name. I was just like, I couldn't get it, and then all of a sudden, I managed to push out of it, and I was, and it was kind of a rush, and I was, freaked me out. And so for a good while, I paused on looking up anything about this stuff or anything. And then I had another night. This is why I brought up the old hag thing. I was working for Amazon, and I was working night shift, and I was coming home in the mornings, and I would lay down in the bed, and I would lay there and check out stuff on YouTube and whatnot, and eventually fall asleep. Well, there was one morning that I was doing that, and I fell asleep like that, and I woke up for just a second, and I couldn't move, and I swear on everything, I heard a cackle come from around the side of the bed area, and it freaked me out. I woke up, I got up, and it was just like a split second, I couldn't move, but it was enough for me. And I don't know if it's because, that stuff, because that was in my memory of thinking about, the stuff that I'd read about prior or what, but the very first experience, I cannot explain why me and my grandfather had similar experiences, why it was in the same house, why we described the same type of entity. And while we're on it, another friend of mine, his mother had talked about some weird instances that they had whenever they were kids, and I would love to talk to her sometime and maybe get her on to talk about some of her experiences. But she talked about having these instances where when she was a child, unexplained things that would happen to them. And she talked about being chased by these colored balls, and that she would be terrified of them for whatever reason. She didn't want them to catch her, and they would blip, chasing her, and they would make this noise that she would, years later, she would describe it as sounding like the 8-bit sound effect from Space Invaders or something, because she told me that she couldn't stand for her kids to play that game when she was later on. She said she actually got horrified. She would come in the house and they were playing Atari, and she heard that noise and it terrified her. and she had this memory of these balls that would chase her. And you know, and if I remember correctly, she talked about her sister waking up and couldn't move, and she watched like it was either Jesus or an angel, but it wasn't like, I remember them saying that it wasn't like right, like there was something off about it. And it walked in the room, stood at the foot of their bed, and then just shattered. And I think they both saw it. And that's another thing with the sleep paralysis stuff. There are incidents where like two people will witness the same hallucination and stuff. You know, so like for instance, I'll give you one, and then I gotta go because I don't want to make this super long. But there was one in a documentary that I saw where a guy was talking about, he was laying on his back, and this demon came into the room and was like leaned over him, and it was like, you're gonna die, and and then all of a sudden the girl beside him freaked out and screamed and raised up, and she was like terrified. And when they got her to calm down, she was like, I woke up and I looked over, and there was this cat with glowing red eyes that was sitting on his chest, and it was talking to him in this like language that I couldn't understand, which that was the thing, the demon thing that came in, the shadow figure that leaned over him, it had glowing red eyes, and it terrified this girl what she saw. So how, and he didn't even tell her yet like what he had seen. And they play this out in this documentary where you can see him talk about it. Excellent documentary. If you've not seen The Nightmare and this kind of thing interests you, or you've had it happen to you, check that documentary out. But basically that's it. I just wanted to throw that out there, talk about it. I talked about it in a video prior, but I wanted to kind of get a little more into it and talk about it there. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear about your experiences. If you've had anything similar to this happen to you in your life, like I said, I would love to hear about them. Comment below. Tell me about it if you're seeing this on Facebook, YouTube, wherever it is you're seeing it, Twitter. I'm always interested in reading these experiences. If you've had any kind of experience paranormal that freaked you out, scared you, that you can't explain, I'd like to hear about that too. I mean, I've got more scary, creepy stuff like this coming. And when I get all my stories told, there's not a whole lot of them. There's a few, but when I get them told, I'm gonna start another kind of series after this where I talk about some other things, creepy stuff that happened to people and whatnot. But so basically, you don't want to miss that. So if you liked what you saw, help me out. Like the video, comment, subscribe, and I guess I'll see you around sometime. Peace.